I love movies. Gosh, I love movies.
We come to this place for magic.
I watch a lot of movies.
You do?
Yeah, I watch about a movie a day.
Welcome to Cinephomaniacs, a podcast by and for movie lovers. I'm Peyton.
And I'm Andrew. In this Pride Month episode, we are talking about two very different new movies about young love, Leviticus and Girls Like Girls.
But first, we're going to briefly discuss what else we've been looking forward to lately in a segment we call Added to Watch List.
A new trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day just dropped, coming out July 31st. This is the fourth movie in the Tom Holland Spider-Man series. It's been 4 years since No Way Home came out, and the world still doesn't know who Spider-Man is. In this one, he goes through a transformation where now he is developing the abilities of a spider, similar to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in the original Spider-Man movie. So now he can finally shoot webs out of his body. At the same time, he is trying to reconnect with MJ, who doesn't remember who he is, and fight off a mysterious telepathic force, which is probably Sadie Sink, but they haven't really revealed it. Oh, and Hulk and Punisher are there too.
I'll see this because I am very charmed by Tom Holland, and I think he's a wonderful Spider-Man. I really don't care about Marvel movies in the way that I used to anymore, but we have Tom and Zendaya here, so I'm sure this will be fun. Or non-offensive, at least.
My interest in the Marvel movies has definitely dropped over the last few years, but I'm always excited for a new Spider-Man movie, and I'm excited to see him return to the form of the Spider-Man movies I grew up on. You know, he's a broke college student who can shoot webs from his own body. When I grew up, that's what Spider-Man was. So the fact that we finally get a movie like that with Tom Holland, I'm looking forward to that.
Another one that was recently announced that we actually had a chance to see at the Florida Film Festival 2 years ago is It Ends. And this was picked up by Neon and will be dropping August 21st.
This was a real fan favorite at that festival. I think we all really liked it. We haven't even gotten a real trailer for it yet, but I would definitely encourage you to put this one on your radar.
For sure. It's exciting to see that this one finally got picked up, especially by a bigger studio like Neon, who has just been killing it on the horror game lately.
Neon, who we'll talk about more later in this episode.
Now we'll get into our section called Remove from Watch List, where every week we chip away at just a few of the movies on Andrew's Letterboxd watch list. Andrew, what is that at right now?
We're still under 58,000. We are now at 57,972.
I feel like that went up from last week, so we need to work a little harder, clearly.
Well, we've got several movies we removed from watch lists this week. One of them was Disclosure Day, which I saw, you didn't. This is the new Steven Spielberg movie, and I was excited to see it just on that level. Without getting into too many spoilers, since this isn't the main focus of the episode, I guess I'll just say that on the whole, this movie did not work for me. I think that the central premise that finding out about aliens would A, be believed by the majority of the country, and B, cause everyone to reconsider their lives and World War III. I think that's a naive perspective. Optimistic, but I don't think it's really grounded in reality. Spielberg is 79, so it's not surprising that he's a little out of touch in that regard.
I'm hearing similar sentiments from a lot of people, but I'm sorry you didn't like this one.
That seems to be the majority opinion. And then the counter opinion just seems to be, no, you're wrong.
No, you're wrong because Spielberg.
Yes, and if you enjoyed this because you like Spielberg's direction, he's one of the best who's ever done it. And if you just like that and his brand of whimsy, then absolutely more power to you. Maybe I'll feel differently when I rewatch it.
One we watched together recently that we also weren't too high on is Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights. This, for some reason, stars Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, and according to Emerald Fennell, is her kind of fantasy retelling of what she saw in her head when she read this as a little girl.
Yeah, for me, this movie just mostly didn't work. It's not a particularly faithful adaptation of Wuthering Heights. which wouldn't be that big of a deal, but the things it changes aren't that great either. They really marketed this as a transgressive, boundary pushing movie, but I thought most of it was pretty tame. The sexual content isn't nearly as explicit as they made it out to be. I think some of the changes they made, either intentionally or unintentionally, affected the meaning. A lot has been made about how Heathcliff in this adaptation is played by a white guy. That's pretty par for the course with adaptations of this. They do race swap two characters in this adaptation, Mr. Linton and Nellie, to be played by actors of Asian descent. And I think the unfortunate implication of this is that the two villains in the story are the only people of color in the main cast.
Although I would argue that Catherine, or Kathy, is also a villain. She is just so insufferable in this. And I'm not saying that Heathcliff is a hero or anything. I honestly really had a tough time with all of these characters. But she just has the emotional maturity of a 7-year-old this entire movie. And I just really struggled to follow her and root for her and Heathcliff. And I love Margot Robbie. I'm a very big fan of hers, but this was just a big miss for me in in every way.
I don't know if that's the design of the character or a fault in Margot Robbie's performance, but I found her really annoying as well. I think part of it is this character for most of the movie is supposed to be in her teen years or early 20s. Margot Robbie is obviously older than that now, and it just comes off very silly, very immature. It looks like a woman well into her 30s trying to play a teenager. It just feels very silly. Jacob Elordi is doing his best, I thought, but this is far from the best performance we've seen from him either.
And full disclosure, I've never read the book, but I feel like if, especially in today's day and age, if you are going to give us a white Heathcliff, at least give us a good movie.
I would say that on a production level, a lot of this is really impressive. All the sets, all the costumes, there's great work being done there. I really enjoyed the soundtrack by Charlie XCX, which is honestly one of the big reasons we watched this. I will say I kind of enjoyed that soundtrack more on its own than in the context of the movie. I think it sold the movie really well, but when we were actually watching it, anytime one of her songs came up, it kind of stops the movie in its tracks and becomes a music video for the next 3 minutes. Made me really wish they had just gone for it and made the thing a musical.
I love Charlie as an artist, and I like most of the songs as well, separately from the film, but when she just starts wailing over the scenes, it, like Andrew said, really does take you out of it.
Maybe we can get Baz Luhrmann's Wuthering Heights next. We did see a pair of really good movies just yesterday. As part of the Enzian's Real Pride series, they showed The Watermelon Woman and Cottonmouth, a short film.
Yes, they actually showed this pair on my birthday, so that's how we started my birthday off, and it was so wonderful. The Watermelon Woman is one I've heard of course, always heard, is just incredible, and Cottonmouth was one that apparently was entered for the Florida Film Festival, but didn't quite make it in for the shorts. They screened that ahead of The Watermelon Woman, and then we had a quick 10-minute Zoom call with the director, so that was really cool as well. But that is one I don't think either of us would have gotten the chance to see otherwise. So it was really neat that the Enzian did that.
Yes, it was fun to see that short aired as well. And it's encouraging to see that even a short that didn't get selected for the festival made an impression on the programmers, that a year later they've decided to show it anyways. The Watermelon Woman is considered the first movie directed by a black lesbian filmmaker. This came out in 1996 during the 90s indie boom, where you had guys like Tarantino, Soderbergh, Linklater, Kevin Smith making low-budget indies and sort of launching them into a full-blown Hollywood career. This was directed by Cheryl Dunye, and it didn't quite launch her into the same kind of career, but it's still a very important work regardless. She plays the protagonist, a woman named Cheryl, who takes an interest in this 1930s black actress who played mammy roles. She finds that this woman is only credited as the Watermelon Woman, and she sets out to learn more about who she really was. This is blending narrative film with documentary aspects. At points you're wondering, are you watching Cheryl the character, or is this Cheryl the filmmaker actually going out and interviewing these people? It really had me wondering, is the subject of this film real? Is this someone she invented? We do get an answer at the end of the movie, but you'll have to stick around and find out for yourself.
Highly recommend going and finding out for yourself. This one was, I was going to say a pleasant surprise, but honestly, I expected it to be pretty great, and it was.
I watched the film Satranic Panic this week on Shudder, and I just really wanted to shout this one out. This is an Australian horror film directed by Alice Mayo McKay. She is 21 years old and has already directed 7 films. 4 of them are available right now on Shudder. She's a trans filmmaker, and all of her films have been horror films about trans people, mostly with them fighting people or entities who are targeting them for being trans. That might sound like a heavy topic, but mostly these are fun movies. This one in particular, Satanic Panic, I think has a very fun musical side plot that made the movie for me. And it's just very inspiring to see such a young filmmaker have such an impressive body of work already. Her next film is called Our Effed Up World and actually just premiered this Friday. It was co-produced by Jane Schoenbrunn of I Saw the TV Glow, and the cast includes Annapurna Sriram, who directed Fuck Toys, which we're big fans of. So I definitely recommend seeking out Alice Mayo McKay and giving her movies a shot.
Andrew introduced me to The Miseducation of Cameron Post, directed by Desiree Akhavan. This one stars Chloe Grace Moretz as Cameron in the titular role. And this one was better than I expected it to be. Watching this during Pride Month especially, this one was very impactful.
This one came out in 2017 and it made a big impact on me at the time. It covers some similar territory to the 2 films we're going to discuss today, especially Leviticus. This is a movie about conversion therapy. If I had to describe the plot, I would say that it is a non-comedic version of But I'm a Cheerleader, said with the most affection for both movies, however. I find it very moving. I think that it's a very accurate portrayal of these types of environments and these types of people that you encounter in churches. I think that all of the actors are just doing exceptional work, especially Emily Skeggs in her supporting role of Erin. So I was glad to share this one with you.
Well, it's all right.
It's showtime, folks.
And now, for the reason you're all really here, let's get into our first movie. So we recently saw Girls Like Girls, written and directed by Hayley Kiyoko, who is primarily a singer, but an actor, writer, and director as well. As an actor, she's probably best known for the Disney classic Lemonade Mouth, which is a movie that I personally love. She's So Gone Heads, Rise Up. Hayley released the song Girls Like Girls in 2015, so over 10 years ago now. She also directed the music video for it, released the same year, which told the story of 2 girls, Coley and Sonia, falling in love. The video starred Stephanie Scott as Coley, who was Hayley's co-star from Gem and the Holograms, and also starred in Insidious Chapter 3. The music video was pretty popular on Tumblr, unsurprisingly, and currently it has 163 million views on YouTube, so it went pretty viral there as well. In 2023, she wrote a YA novel of the same name, which expanded on the story of the music video. And finally, now in June of 2026, the feature film adaptation has arrived. The story was developed by Hayley and Chloe Okuno, and the screenplay was written by her as well as Stephanie Scott. Hayley also released a soundtrack album to go along with the movie, so she has dedicated so much to this in the last 11 years of her life now. That's insane.
The movie version of Girls Like Girls stars newcomer Maya DaCosta as Coley and Myra Molloy of Ty's Got Talent and He's All That as Sonia. Also on the cast are Zach Braff as Coley's father and Levon Hawke as Trenton, Sonya's boyfriend. The movie's set in the mid-2000s. Coley has just moved to a small town to live with her father after the death of her mother. She doesn't really know her father because he wasn't around. Her parents split up when she was young, so she just doesn't really know him. And she is pretty lonely in this small town. She happens to run into Sonya and her friends, and Sonya invites her out to swim with them, and pretty immediately Coley has a crush on Sonya. We wonder, does Sonya have a crush on her as well, or is she just being friendly?
I didn't wonder that. I felt like it was clear that Sonya pretty immediately has a crush on Coley too. After they first meet, Sonya gives Coley her email address so she can message her on AIM, and Coley promises to later that night, but she doesn't. So the next morning, when Coley comes downstairs, Sonya is in her kitchen, there to ask her why she didn't message her the night before. So I figured pretty quickly that there was something going on there.
Yes, Sonya's definitely the bolder of the two of them. Coley's a little more reserved. Sonya's definitely the pretty girl, popular girl, that sort of archetype within the friend group.
We follow the two of them and the rest of their friends for a while as they grow closer. We see Trenton, who again is Sonya's boyfriend, kind of giving them strange glances. Everyone can tell that they're getting really close really quickly. They're often sneaking off to have time to themselves away from the group, hanging out one-on-one. Trenton is getting more and more upset that Sonya doesn't seem to have nearly as much time for him or interest in him anymore. So they're falling pretty hard and fast for each other, and it's not difficult to see.
That said, this is the 2000s and they're teenagers, so even though it's clear there is something between them, it takes a while for either of them to really admit it. Until finally they do have a moment where they can get alone, just the two of them, and kiss. Unfortunately for Coley, Sonya just seems to move on from it, doesn't really even acknowledge that it happened between them, and still seems to be kinda sorta dating Trenton.
Yeah, Sonya is immediately pretty distant, not talking to Coley as much, not hanging out one-on-one, making out with Trenton right in front of her face. And Sonya definitely is struggling with what happened, struggling with what that means for her, but of course this makes Coley feel awful. And the two of them are in a pretty bad place until finally they're able to reconnect one night at a house party.
Coley finds out at this party that Sonya's leaving to go to dance camp for the summer, and is a little hurt because Sonya hasn't told this to her yet. She follows Sonya into the bathroom and sort of confronts her about it, but Sonya denies that she's been dodging her, just says that she's been really busy. They sort of reconnect and end up sneaking into a bedroom and locking the door. They're kind of on top of each other, about to make out, and then Trenton starts slamming on the door. When they unlock it, everyone kind of catches them in there together and wonders what exactly they were doing in a bedroom alone together.
With the door locked.
The next day, Coley messages Sonya and asks can she see her one last time before Sonya leaves for camp, and Sonya claims that she's just so busy packing that day that it's just not going to happen.
Coley isn't having that though and goes over to Sonya's house. Sonya's mom, who knows Coley as one of Sonya's good friends, lets her right in. And Coley sees that Sonya is having a little get-together by her pool with all of their other friends.
Which she conveniently didn't invite her to or tell her about even.
Coley makes up an excuse about needing to grab something from Sonya and is able to get her to go up to Sonya's bedroom with her. And Coley tries to have a confrontation with her about everything that's gone down.
Coley is pretty direct with Sonya, tells her, I know you like me, why are you doing this? But Sonya doesn't really take it well. She's just very cold, kind of denies dodging her, and Coley ends up running out of the house crying to her dad, and Sonya continues on to go to dance camp. This is where the movie kind of expands beyond what the music video covered. We get some coming of age scenes with Coley where she's getting to know her father and they both learn a little more about each other. They learn that maybe the things that she was told about him growing up weren't the whole story, and there's some things going on with her mom that she didn't realize. While Sonya is at camp, we see Coley's perspective of the summer where she goes through a lot of milestones. She hooks up with another girl who's a little more low-key and comfortable with herself than Sonya is, but she mostly just feels bad about it because she knows it's not the right person for her. She gets her first job, makes some new friends, starts bonding with her dad, and then one day, months later, she sees Sonya come in with her family and asks to talk with her after work.
Coley is working as a waitress at a local restaurant, so Sonya comes in with her family, and Coley actually has to go and sing happy birthday to Sonya and her little sister. I can't think of a worse reintroduction for a teenage girl. That's the stuff of nightmares.
Coley reluctantly agrees to meet with Sonya after work, and they go and sit in the car. Sonya talks about how much she missed her and wants Coley to be in her life. Coley is still pretty hurt, though. She feels that Sonya is using her to bring her some emotional fulfillment, but at the same time, she can't be out as a lesbian. She can't have a public relationship with her. You can sort of understand both sides here. Sonya is in a difficult spot where her life would change, her relationships with her family and everything would change if it came out that she was in a relationship with a girl. At the same time, Coley is absolutely not wrong. She deserves a relationship with someone who can really be with her and isn't afraid to show it in public.
While that conversation does not end well, slowly, through the help of some of their other friends, Sonya and Coley are able to kind of come back together. The movie ends with them at another party, sitting just the two of them by the pool, and Coley tells Sonya that she doesn't have to keep running from who she is. And finally, Sonya agrees that, yeah, she wants to stop running. And apparently, there's a post-credit scene that nobody told us about, so unfortunately we haven't seen yet. So when you see this, make sure to wait until the credits are done. But this movie officially ends with Coley walking away from the party and Sonya chasing after her to kiss her. So instead of running away, Sonya is now running towards Coley.
Which would have been a nice scene to see before the credits. I remember when the ending of the movie used to be included with the movie.
Yeah, it would have been awesome to have some kind of warning about that. Our bad. I don't think either of us loved this, but we do seem to be in the minority there. And there were a lot of things that I did really like about it. I think it's a gorgeous directorial debut overall. Myra Molloy, who plays Sonya, is incredible in this. She really was a standout for me. And while a lot of the dialogue between Coley and Sonya is awkward, I do think that this movie does a wonderful job of showing what that kind of first major high school crush feels like. The butterflies, the stolen glances. I really think it does a good job of putting you right back in that place.
Yeah, this movie seems to really be having a lot of impact with some people. We talked about how big the music video was 10 years ago on Tumblr. I think there are a lot of girls who just feel seen by it and have probably followed the story since then, read the book maybe. It's just heartening to see themselves depicted on screen in that way. I do think this is mostly a pretty standard YA movie and probably a pretty standard YA novel. I haven't read it. I think the big difference is that this one just happens to be between two girls and that seems to capture that in a very real way.
I think it's awesome that this came out during Pride Month, and like I said earlier, clearly Hayley Kiyoko has poured so much of her time, effort, and heart into this story through the song, music video, book, and now movie. And so seeing that on the big screen made me very happy for her.
I was a big fan of a lot of the performances here as well. I think Zach Braff was giving a really understated but emotional performance as the dad. I also enjoyed Myra Molloy and Maya DaCosta. I think this is a great calling card for Maya DaCosta as her first film. One of the stands out, and not in a good way, on the cast was Levon Hawke. He is Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's son, Maya's younger brother, and he just felt so out of place to me. Anytime they showed him, it kind of took me out of it. I think for the most part, this movie does a good job of keeping you planted in the real world and planted in the mid-2000s, and then he just doesn't seem like part of that world to me.
Overall, though, I think we both feel that you should go see this if you still have the opportunity, if it's playing near you. Stories like this, especially in times like now, deserve to be supported, and it certainly is a good movie overall. It's a very sweet story and a very real story.
You okay? You see anything that looks like me? Don't go near it.
The other big movie this weekend is Neon's new release, Leviticus. This is an Australian horror movie, and it's also a representation of a teenage same-sex relationship. This stars Joe Bird from Talk to Me as Name, Stacy Clausen as Ryan, and Mia Wasikowska as Name's mother, Arlene. And Name's name is spelled Naim. That's a word in Arabic and Hebrew, which can mean comfort, happiness, or pleasant. The title Leviticus is a reference to the Old Testament verse that says it is an abomination for a man to lie with another man as he would with a woman. So it's a movie that's very much wearing its meaning on its sleeve. This premiered at the Midnight Selection at Sundance, and we're big fans of midnight movies here. It was in the same block as Buddy, a movie I'm really looking forward to, Mom, I'm Alien Pregnant, Saccharine, and Undertone. So mostly just horror movies or other wacky out there movies. And right away, there was a lot of buzz around this movie. I saw people on Letterboxd and even in our friend group who were looking forward to this. When we went to the Florida Film Festival shortly after and went to the secret midnight screening, the majority opinion was that they were hoping it would be Leviticus.
The setup here is actually pretty similar to that of Girls Like Girls. We're following Name and his mom, Arlene, who, following Name's father's death, have just moved to a pretty small town in Victoria, Australia. It's clear pretty early on that this is a deeply religious, devout environment. Pretty much everyone we see around town, we also see at the church services. And while this is very comforting for Name's mom, he is kind of struggling in this environment because it turns out that the one friend he has made here and pretty much his only source of joy is Ryan, another local teenage boy who a secret romance begins to blossom with. Pretty quickly on in the film, actually, like the first scene we get with them together.
The movie wastes no time in that aspect. Will they? Won't they? We know in the first few minutes they will.
They will. And something I thought was funny is in Girls Like Girls, how them liking each other manifests is these kind of looks across the room when the other isn't looking, or flirting, telling each other, "You're so pretty, I love you so much," stuff like that. And here with the teenage boys, it manifests in light physical violence. They're throwing small rocks at each other, trying to hit each other with pipes, wrestling a little.
Playful hitting is just how boys say hello.
We follow Name and Ryan for a bit as they continue this secret relationship, seemingly getting closer and closer when one day, when Name has gone to Ryan's house to surprise him, he finds Ryan in his backyard with the pastor's son, Hunter, and he sees the two kissing. So obviously he's very hurt by this, and in a fit of jealousy, Name impulsively runs and outs Ryan and Hunter to Hunter's parents, who, again, his dad is the pastor of this community church who pretty much the whole town attends. So obviously it's horrible to do this in any context, but this is a pretty serious thing that name has just done to Ryan and Hunter.
At this point, the pastor has the congregation assemble, and they bring in a new character that they call the Deliverance Healer. And this character is presented like a cross between Father Merrin in The Exorcist and a hitman. He's like the only guy they know who can do this job. And he rolls up in a leather jacket and rolls up his sleeves with tattoos all up his arms to prepare to do the ritual. This is presented similarly to a healing ceremony you might see in a charismatic church, where he is praying over the boys and trying to heal them, deliver them of this spirit of lust in them. We've actually seen a movie pretty recently that had something like this. It was a scary movie, and it played it with a much more comedic tone, parodying the famous Andrew Caldwell clip. This is not played for any humor, because the boys, at first, don't really take it seriously, just kind of roll their eyes at it. However, once the Deliverance Healer lights a lighter to sort of put a cap on the spell he's casting on them, check off a box, they immediately start convulsing, basically seize on the floor, and it's clear that this was a very physically traumatic experience for both of them.
I thought maybe Hunter and Ryan were kidding at first and maybe just playing around and going along with it, but no, this goes on for a while, them convulsing, and it seems to freak out the whole congregation because they have gathered everyone for this ceremony. So not only do these two have to endure this horrible physical experience, and emotional, pretty much the whole town gets to watch them go through it as well. So that's just horrible in every way.
And Name already feels so guilty about outing them and putting them through this.
As he should. Actually, it's incredible how much empathy Joe Bird is able to inject into Name, especially once you see what this ritual brings about, because on its own, outing the two of them is unforgivable, even if he was upset, which understandably he was, but that's just not an okay response. But of course, with this being a horror movie, even more horrific things are going to follow than just the two being outed to their parents and the community. And despite that happening, there really is such humanity to Name's character. He's our protagonist here. We're following his POV the whole time. And he really is, I think, someone that you still are rooting for, someone that you care about if bad things happen to him and his loved ones. So Joe Bird really just killed it here.
From this point, Ryan is a lot more withdrawn. He just kind of walks through school with his head down. He has scrapes and bruises showing up on him, and you wonder, are his parents doing this to him? Are bullies doing this to him? It seems that everyone in school now knows because they did this ceremony in church in front of all of them. Or is it something else doing it to him? One day, Name follows Ryan and sees him talking to seemingly no one at all, and follows Ryan into a skating rink. Ryan goes into a photo booth and is still talking to someone, ends up kissing him, but when the photos come out of the booth, it's just he's kissing thin air. And then he seems to start being hit and choked and runs out screaming. And then Ryan sees Name and says that Name was the one who did this to him.
Of course, we've been watching Name, so we know that's not true. And this immediately clues us in that something crazy is up.
And this is one of the scenes where it's interesting that we only ever see from Name's point of view. Because you'd think that with a scene like this, we might be following Ryan through it. Instead, we know from the start that Ryan is not with the real Name during any of this.
Obviously, Name is shook by this, so he goes to talk to Hunter to see if he can get any sort of answers. And Hunter seems to be really freaked out as well. He tells Name that every night after his shift at some sort of convenience store, Ryan comes and just acts kind of menacing and threatening.
Hunter says that Ryan shows up and throws rocks at him, but he says that he's not going to engage with him. He's basically had this lustful spirit, as they would say, beaten out of him, and he knows that he's just not going to do that. No matter how hard Ryan tries to come onto him, he's just not going to give in.
Obviously, this is horrible for Ryan, too, with Hunter being the pastor's son. I can't imagine what he's going through right now. So one night, Name, wanting to talk to him further about this, hides out in the store that Hunter works in until it closes. While he's trying to talk to him, Hunter takes the garbage out, which leaves Name locked in the store and Hunter outside by himself. Here we get our second entity attack.
Yes, the entity lifts Hunter up by the throat, throws him around, drags him. It's playing by It Follows rules, where this is not just occurring in Hunter's head. There is a physical being there that can affect objects, affect people. You just don't see them unless you're the victim. Name manages to get out of the convenience store, but it's too late as Hunter is dragged away, and soon after, the police find his head in a field. Name goes to the police and begs them to do something about it, but the police, per usual, are useless and don't really believe him, don't really do anything about him, just tell him they'll look into it.
In his desperation, Name has told one of the officers that he and Ryan are involved romantically, which that officer then relays to Name's mother. So, claiming that she wants to protect her son from the hatred and persecution that she thinks maybe even killed Hunter, his mom takes him to that same deliverance healer who performed the ceremony on Hunter and Ryan. So, the same process that Name initiated when he outed them at the beginning happens to him.
The mother is an interesting character because her justification for this is that it's a difficult world for people like Ryan, people like Hunter, people like Name, and that she's just doing this to protect him because she doesn't want him to become a victim of hate like that. And this is very similar to some arguments you might see in the real world of parents of queer children who might send them to a conversion camp or in some other way encourage them not to show that side of themselves. And if I'm not wrong, and I might be wrong, I don't think they ever say gay in this movie. I don't think they ever say gay or homosexual or any kind of slur. I think it's always just people like that or people who do that kind of thing. It's still understood in this community what they're referring to. Name is put through the same healing ceremony, and shortly after he goes to the funeral of Hunter.
Where afterwards at the wake, Name thinks that he sees Ryan kind of outside on the outskirts of the property under a tree. And of course, Name is in a horrible place right now. He feels a lot of guilt because of what happened to Hunter, what he fears will happen to Ryan, and what now might happen to him too. So he goes to talk to Ryan, who tries to kiss him pretty quickly, which then turns into an attack. He pushes him up against the fence. He's choking him. He's like sticking his whole fist down his throat, just really going at it. In an effort to get away, Name runs back towards the house where everyone else is, where he sees the real Ryan standing there looking dumbfounded. As Name and Ryan are walking away, they are grabbed by Hunter's sister, Izzy, who tells them that her parents have known this deliverance healer for a while and that actually he performed this ceremony on 2 other girls in town who were also in a relationship, and one of them was killed under mysterious circumstances that they tried to say was a drowning, but she knows was the result of whatever happens to you after this ritual is performed.
The other girl is still alive, and we learn that she stays in the hospital most of the time in the big city just to be around other people, because if you're in front of other people, the entity can't get to you. The boys board a bus together and travel to the city to meet her. At first, they start asking her questions about this other girl, and she wants nothing to do with it. They mention the deliverance healer, and she says, whatever you do, don't go to him. You won't like what he's selling. And they say, too late. And it's at this point where she finally starts to listen to them. They go out into the ambulance bay, and she reveals the nature of this entity to them, which is that it takes the form of the person you're most attracted to get close to you.
And it doesn't even have to be someone you know. It can be a celebrity.
Your gym
Or-
teacher, your cousin.
Her advice to them is to stay as far apart from each other as possible, because the more time they spend together, the better the entity will get at imitating them and getting close enough to kill them.
It doesn't take long at all for them to encounter the entity again, because as they're boarding the bus, Ryan gets on the bus and the door closes after him before Name can get on. And all Name has to do is turn and he sees the fake Ryan in the distance running toward him.
Yeah, when the movie tells us that this thing has to wait until you're alone to attack you, it means that incredibly literally. There is a bus full of people right there, but because the door is closed and he's technically alone, that thing is sprinting for him.
Thankfully, the door opens just in time and Name gets on.
And this is a very effective scare, honestly, because probably not the same for Andrew as it is for me. But I think one of the scariest images ever is just a large, angry man running at you. And that's exactly what's happening in this scene. And thankfully, Name is able to get on the bus in time. The door opens right before that thing reaches him, but very effective scare.
You talked earlier about Joe Bird's performance, and I think this is another aspect where it's interesting that he is the POV character, because Joe Bird is a little smaller, has kind of a slender build, whereas Stacy Clausen is taller, more muscular. He's got this kind of charming curly blonde hair. He has like a young Heath Ledger quality to him. So of the two of them, he is the one who's more physically imposing. And it does make sense just from a horror perspective that you make that one the one the entity takes the form of throughout most of the movie, instead of the smaller, less intimidating one. Luckily, the door does open in time and Name makes it onto the bus. He and Ryan go to the back of the bus and ride back in the middle of the night and share an intimate moment in the back of the bus, which plays on a little too long, in my opinion. Long enough that I was wondering if something bad was about to happen, either the entity or just some of the other people on the bus noticing them. Thankfully, it doesn't, so they're able to take a little comfort in each other and just kind of share a sweet moment. They get back home and go to school, and they have another sweet moment where they're sort of making glances at each other, and Ryan takes a detour in the bathroom and seems to be inviting Name in to join him, but Name questions it, is a little scared, so he doesn't go in, and we don't actually see what happens in the bathroom, but we see Ryan running out holding his ear, and when he moves his hand, it's barely hanging on and is just bleeding everywhere.
A little bit after this, once Ryan is stitched up but still has a giant scar on his ear, Izzy, who is Hunter's sister, says that she has more information that can help them. So they get into the car with her. This is under false pretenses. Actually, what she does is take them to an abandoned car park where she has a group of classmates waiting, ready to attack them, fully armed with bats and shit. And it's here that she reveals that she is essentially consumed by grief. She blames the two of them for her brother's death. Also, it's here where she drops the bomb that Name is the one who outed Hunter and Ryan in the first place.
Yes, you just have layers on layers of people pointing fingers and refusing to accept the blame. Because in the earlier scene, we see the pastor is clearly taking the death of his son hard and feeling some kind of guilt about bringing in the deliverance healer. We have Izzy, who's also feeling a lot of grief, but instead of blaming her father, instead of blaming the deliverance healer, is blaming Name because he was the one who named names.
I am a bit confused about where her switch up came from, though, I will say. I absolutely understand that she must be feeling such intense grief, but she was so willing to actually help them earlier. It was a little odd to me that she took them to essentially get hate crimed.
Yeah, I would say that this is definitely one of those moments where the movie needs it to happen more so than the characters are driving it to happen. Ryan and Name do manage to get away in the car, Ryan actually being the one to wait in the car for Name to get in so they can both get away. However, he tells him that he never wants to see him again. He tells him, if you see anyone who looks like me, stay away, because it's not going to be me, not ever, and formally severs ties from him. Name is distraught. He can't sleep through the night, and he's having these horrible dreams, including a pretty effective double dream fake out. He tries to sleep in his mother's room, but she won't allow it. Despite him pleading with her to stay, she says she has to go out for the night and just leaves him home alone.
Of course, the entity takes that opportunity to attack. Name sees what appears to be Ryan standing out in his yard, and he freaks out. He's locking all the doors, making sure the windows are closed, and there's pounding at one of the doors when all of a sudden on the other side of the house, he hears knocking and Ryan's voice. So Name runs over to the screen door, and he is still not quick to go up to it or to let this person in, but he feels a bit safer since this is coming from the opposite end of where he just heard the entity banging at. So Ryan, or this thing that looks like Ryan, is kind of sweet talking him, telling him that it's going to be okay, that they can fight this thing out together, saying, honestly, some really hard-hitting stuff in the form of, this is what they wanted when they put us through this ritual. They wanted us to fear each other, to not be able to be with each other, which is true. And eventually Name softens enough to go right up to the screen door, where this thing promptly rams its hand through and tries to slam Name's head through it.
It's a really effective sequence because we're kind of in Name's position of not being totally sure if it's Ryan or not, even though the scene keeps going and going long enough that we might be starting to think, okay, maybe this is actually Ryan. Maybe they are going to help each other out. But no, it's still the entity, and we have to always be questioning it, just like Name needs to.
Trying to fight back against this thing, Name holds up a lighter that he has, and this is the first time we see something work against the entity in terms of fighting back. Fire was also used in the ritual done by the deliverance healer, and it appears to just take the creature out as soon as it touches it. It isn't fatal or anything, it's able to get back up, but Name has discovered that fire is something that will give them at least a running start.
He runs away from what looks like Ryan and sees another Ryan who isn't exactly chasing him, but he still doesn't trust it. He runs to a convenience store and begs anyone there to just stay out with him until the sun comes up. All he needs is someone to stay with him so that he doesn't get attacked. And of course, they all just look at him like he's crazy and leave as soon as they can.
He's booking it until he makes his way to an abandoned mill where he and Ryan used to spend a lot of time together having little dates and things. And here we get a really fun fight scene, actually. This is where they were earlier when they were kind of flirting, using physical violence, throwing things at each other. During that earlier scene, there was a giant pipe that Name tries to pick up, and Ryan kind of teases him because Name can't even get it off the ground. Ryan tries, he actually can't either. So now Name and this entity that looks like Ryan are back in this same setting, really battling it out. The thing is on top of Name, has him pinned down, and the pipe is right there. This thing picks up the pipe and with one hand, no effort at all, is able to lift it right high above its head and try to use it to slam down on Name. It was such an effective callback. I loved this scene.
For the rest of this scene, we know for sure that it's not the real Ryan. And so Name fights him, manages to pull the lighter out and start a fire in the mill. He escapes and locks the entity in. And then the entity is kind of talking to him, claiming that actually he's the real Ryan and trying to convince him, saying, it's okay, this is what I wanted. And I think a worse movie would probably make that the ending. Like, oh, actually, it was the real Ryan all along, and this was just a trick he pulled so that he could end the curse. But no, it was the entity, and Name closes him in and lets him burn to death. Sometime later, Ryan is missing and the authorities are doing an official search. And this does disturb name, makes him question, well, was it the real Ryan? However, they search the mill and find no traces that anyone was there.
As Name is kind of coming to terms with this, that Ryan might also be gone, we get a pretty insane reveal from Name's mom, who had been telling him again this whole time that she was told the deliverance healer would keep him safe, and she did it to protect him so that he wouldn't be targeted by bigotry and hate. She tells Name that she knew the whole time what the actual consequences of the ritual would be, but still tries to justify it by saying she thought it would keep him safe. In what way? He now has to run from this thing for the rest of his life because, yes, he hasn't seen it since it burned at the mill, but we do not know that that means that it is gone. We've actually been told earlier during the scene at the hospital that nothing can stop this thing. And she knew that it had killed Hunter, so she knows that she's setting a violent, murderous entity on her son to keep him safe from bigotry. That math just isn't mathing for me.
For me, I'd say this is one of those times where the metaphorical meaning of the device holds together better than the actual in-universe literal explanation for it. Because if we are looking at this as an allegory for the way that Christians react to homosexuality, I can see how it tracks if you think of conversion therapy, for example. I think it's notable that the deliverance healing ceremony doesn't actually heal them of their homosexuality, nor even really pretends to. What it actually does is unleash a demon on them so that they're just scared of ever expressing it. So if you're looking at this as an allegory for, let's say, conversion therapy, then does it really convert your sexuality? No, of course not. It just kind of teaches you to hide it better, let's say, or just hate yourself for the rest of your life and try to change yourself.
After learning this, Name just can't live with what his mom did to him, understandably. And so they're in the car together and she stops at a gas station. While she's inside, he runs away from the car and to the bus station. And it is here where he sees Ryan waiting. Of course, he isn't sure if this is actually Ryan, if this is the entity having come back. So they're both looking at each other with hesitation, looking exhausted, beaten up, beaten down. But finally, when they get close enough, Ryan says, "Is that really you?" And this kind of confirms for the audience and for Name and for Ryan that it really is them. They are safe in this moment. And when the bus pulls up, of course, they are surrounded by other passengers. Even though they haven't spoken since their last interaction where Ryan told him he didn't want anything to do with Name anymore, it seems that this shared experience has brought them back together, and they board the bus, ready to leave the town and the people that did this to them behind. And while the bus is driving away, Name is looking off into the distance, and we do see something that looks like Ryan standing out in a field. So this thing apparently did not burn to death. It is possible that it is still coming after them and might never stop. But they have each other, they're in it together, and despite that reality, this was still a very sweet and hopeful ending for the two of them.
They say at a few points in the movie that the worst thing you could do is stay together because it will just get better at imitating your partner. But personally, I felt like staying together would be the best thing you could do. It would be difficult, but if you could just stay inside of your partner 24/7, I think that's probably the most definitive way to know that it's the real them. At one point earlier in the movie, when they are briefly reunited, Ryan tells Name, "If I'm going to have to run from this thing for the rest of my life, I'd rather it be you than some other dickhead." And so ultimately the end of this movie does pay that off when they run away together. This movie has already been compared a lot in the horror community to It Follows. That was a movie in 2014 where a curse is transmitted sexually. And so until you have sex with a different person and pass it to them, you are just going to be hunted by this creature. The way that the creature presents is also similar in this movie, where it's just kind of an invisible being, but it is real. It can move things, touch people. I think that the rules of that movie were probably clearer overall. At times, it seemed as if the rules for this movie worked exactly enough to get us to 90 minutes, because the more you investigate them, the less sense it really makes. But I do think as a metaphor, it holds together really well and is a much more powerful metaphor than the one in It Follows is. I think it's a very powerful metaphor for the way that people will instill hate and fear in queer children, claiming it's about protecting them. The movie doesn't really dive into this, so I'm just kind of bringing this on my own, but I think it's kind of a potentially potent AIDS allegory if you look at the way that that was a threat hanging over the especially gay male community for such a long time. It's like, do you really want to express that part of yourself and get this disease that could kill you? There were a lot of men who never really embraced the lifestyle they wanted to have, never embraced who they really were, because they were scared that that would happen if they ever expressed it. A movie that I really adore, All of Us Strangers. Andrew Scott's character is a man like that who spent most of his life afraid to ever be with another man because he grew up in the 80s during the AIDS epidemic. I like that we got a hopeful ending here. Like I said earlier, I think that a worse version of this does end with one or both of them dying. But we already have so many versions of that in movies depicting same-sex relationships. You know, enough that we call it the bury your gays trope. And I think it does work a lot better for this movie, that it ends on a somewhat hopeful, if ambiguous, ending.
The director, Adrian Chiarella, has spoken about how he's wanted to make a horror movie about growing up gay in Australia for some time now. And he actually had a whole Rolodex of ideas, including making The Exorcist but gay. But he said he felt like making a movie where religious groups were able to exorcise something from people that was causing them to be queer probably would only feed into the current stereotypes we're trying to fight against. And ultimately, a demon that looked like the person you desire most in the world is what he landed on. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I do think that's such an excellent interpretation of the fear that homophobia and bigotry does try to instill in the queer community, especially kids, trying to make the person that you love something evil. This was a really interesting exploration of that.
I was a big fan of the two lead performances here as well. Joe Bird already was such a standout in Talk to Me, and this was the first thing I'd seen Stacy Clausen in, but I was very impressed with him as well. I think he has a star quality.
I definitely thought so too, and it's always awesome to see Mia Wasikowska, even if she's playing such a character.
Yes, I still think she's a little too young to be playing the parent of the protagonist, but always nice to see her. She's mostly stepped away from Hollywood movies in the last few years, so it's nice to see her even in an Australian movie that happens to be breaking through in the States. Neon has been very excited about this one. Supposedly at Sundance, they were running for the exits to buy the movie as soon as they could. They did something that I thought was really interesting in the promotion of this movie. They encouraged people to make fan cams of Naeem and Ryan, including releasing official clips and photos of the movie. I'd never seen a studio just release a media kit like that with the intention of everyday fans finding it and using it. But they really clearly wanted this to turn into, fan cams and just clips on TikTok.
As a fan cam girly myself, I love this idea. I think more studios and movies should get on this ASAP.
I'm very curious to see whether this breaks out or not in the broader movie-going community. I think sometimes something that's big in hardcore horror fans isn't as big in the real world, but sometimes it does break through, like Obsession. So it'll be interesting to see how this hits with people as they find it. And that'll do it for this Pride Month episode of Cinephomaniacs. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts to continue listening to us.
You can also find us on Instagram, Letterboxd, Twitter, and TikTok at Cinephomaniacs. Follow us on all those platforms for some behind-the-scenes looks, fun facts, and to know when we drop our episodes. You can find more from Andrew on Substack at Andrew Likes Movies.
On our Letterboxd, you can find lists of every movie we've mentioned, every movie we've removed from watch list, added to watch list, so don't worry too much about keeping notes as you listen.
Thank you so much for tuning in to talk movies with us.
We can't wait to talk to you again.
Bye.
If you're nut, there's usually a nut.